about the reason why we're here. And the reason why we're here today is because we have tens of thousands of Floridians, heck, just in this county alone, but throughout the state, who depend on the viability of our cruise industry for their livelihoods, for their jobs, for their ability to feed their families. You'll hear about some of the stories of people standing right behind me. And so today is a day for us to fight for them, fight for our friends and our neighbors who just want to go back to work and just want to be given that opportunity to do it. And so I want to bring up Monica Sabata. She's a former employee of Cruiseport Destinations. She's going to tell her story, and I think it's a story that's really reflective of a lot of the experience that we see with so many people who are who have been affected by the federal government shutting down this industry. Monica?
Good afternoon. Thank you, Governor. The reason why we're here today is because in March of 2020, sadly and unfortunately, we were ordered to shut our doors for 2 weeks. That was hard enough for the staff that we had at the time. These were people that some considered supplemental income. Some others were of retirement age, and this was their social hour. And this was part of their livelihood. And when we had to shut our doors for 2 weeks, we gave everybody hope, and we stayed in touch. We did Zoom calls. We kept everybody alive and well and happy and joyful for what was to come. We played the game by the rules. Here we are over a year later, and we have had deaths. And sadly, and I say sadly, because it wasn't due to COVID, it was quite literally due to heartbreak. These two individuals, and I must speak about them, had heart attacks based on sadness. Like I said, the Port of Miami has served so many people in so many different ways. It's not just the cruisers, it is their employees. And the joy that traveled through the Port of Miami for the longest time was intoxicating. For the past year, I have taken a lot of calls, a lot of Zoom calls on my time, because what people need is to connect. They need to go back to work. Company, we have gifted them many times gift cards for pharmaceutical needs, for food needs, and just chatting with them gives them a little bit of hope. But we're really at our wits' end at this point. We don't know what else to tell them. I have had people tell me that they're on the verge of committing suicide because they really don't know what to do. Now, I'm not a psychologist. I can only be a friend. And it also takes a toll on me, because how do you tell these people, don't worry, it's gonna be okay, we're gonna get back to work, it's gonna be fine? Really, at this, pardon me, at this point, it's very difficult to keep the hope alive for them. And put it up.
There we go. Tight, tight, tight.
Good. All right, we're back. At this point, it's very difficult to have that conversation, keep a straight face and say, we're gonna be okay. We need to go back to work. Nobody wants a handout. We don't want a handout. What we want is to go back to work. What we need is to go back to work. It's not just the financial aspect. It's the emotional and the mental and the physical well-being of these people, of all of us. So I cannot implore anymore how immensely important it is for all of these Miamians to go back to work. The Port of Miami has supplied an immense amount of employment to people that, at this point, they have nothing. They have nothing. And we, at this point, have nothing to give them. So that's why we're here. We're here because all of these people need to go back to work, and we are representing thousands more. Thank you.
You know, if you look around the country and compare the rest of the country to the state of Florida in terms of the economy, our unemployment's 4.7% for the last report. Nationally, it's at 6.3%. And that's a result of us making sure people's right to work was protected, making sure businesses had the right to operate. This is something that's being imposed, this shutdown, by the CDC and the federal government. And so if you look at Miami-Dade County, even though the state of Florida is far below the national average in terms of the unemployment rate, here in Dade County, it's one of the highest unemployment rates in the entire state. And it's way higher than the state average and higher than even the national average. And the main reason for that is because the federal government and the CDC has locked down this industry for over a year. This is not reasonable. This is not rational. And guess what? If they say that cruising is not safe, even with widespread vaccine availability, all the testing you want, they have now antibody treatments that have been very effective. They have all these different things. It's a much different situation than a year ago. But guess what? People are still going to go on cruises. You know what they're going to do? Instead of flying to Miami, spending money to stay in our hotels, spending money to eat in our restaurants before they get on the ship, they're going to fly to the Bahamas. And they're going to get on the ships from the Bahamas, and they're going to spend the money in the Bahamas, and then they're going to do the same thing that they would have done. It just won't be helping the state of Florida, and it won't be helping our folks here who really depend on it. So how does that make any sense? It doesn't. It's irrational, and this is something that we don't believe can continue any longer. And so today, I'm happy to announce that on behalf of the tens of thousands of Floridians whose livelihood depends on the viability of an open cruise industry, today Florida's fighting back. We're filing a lawsuit against the federal government and the CDC demanding that our cruise ships be reopened immediately. This will be something that we believe we have every legal right to insist upon. We don't believe the federal government has the right to mothball a major industry for over a year. Based on very little evidence and very little data. And I think we have a good chance for success. But here's the thing. It's our responsibility to fight for our fellow Floridians. If they are in dire straits, and you heard Monica, the stories, it's not just about even dollars and cents. Obviously, people want a paycheck. They want to be able to control their own destiny and do things like that. But it's also about your livelihood, how you feel about yourself, how your mental health is doing, all these other things that are negatively affected when you have something like this happen where you're shut out. And the thing is, too, is not only are they shut out, there's really just no end in sight, because whatever they do next, it's probably going to be so cumbersome that the cruise lines aren't even going to be able to sail under some ridiculous order with having to do all these other things. So our view is people can make the decisions that they want to make. People are going to cruise one way or another. It's a question is, are we going to do it out of Florida, which is the #1 place to do it in the world, or are they going to be doing it out of the Bahamas or other locations? And so I think that the answer to that question should be obvious for Floridians. We want our folks to be able to go back to work. We want to be able to stand up for them and their families. And so today we're doing that. I'm very happy to be partnering with our Attorney General, Ashley Moody. We've been discussing this now for many weeks. We knew that we had to do something. We did have an event at Port Canaveral a couple weeks ago imploring the CDC to take action. They've not taken sufficient action, and so we believe that it is time for us to vindicate the state's rights and the rights of the state in court, and also vindicate the livelihoods of the tens of thousands of Floridians who depend on this industry. So the Attorney General is going to come up, give you a little bit more information on what we're doing today, but I couldn't be more proud to be working with her on this very, very important issue. And on behalf of everyone you see standing back here, everyone else in the community, particularly in Miami-Dade County, help is on the way here. We're going to keep at this until we finally get it open.
Well, thank you so much, Governor DeSantis. During his first weeks in office, he stood up and announced to the people of the state of Florida that, in keeping with Alexander Hamilton's quote, energy in the executive is the leading character of good government. And thank goodness we have a leader in our executive branch here in Florida that not only understands that, not only pledged to do that on behalf of Floridians, but during the last 2 years, and especially during the last year, has demonstrated that he will put forth the energy and engagement with Floridians and its businesses to determine what is needed, even during our most critical times. And today's announcement demonstrates how that leads to good government. We are not going to sit back while an administrative agency decides to shut down an entire industry. 60% of the nation's cruises come out of Florida. Almost $8 billion is injected into Florida's economy because of this thriving industry. And what we heard yesterday was announcements that cruises are again delaying and canceling because of this administration. Because this administration is not willing to engage in the details, address the evolving, now relevant, updated medical, scientific data, evaluate how vaccines are affecting the health of our communities and our abilities to cruise safely. They are not willing to revamp and consider lifting these no-sail orders and allowing us to resume this thriving industry with reasonable health protocols. And why is it important for the administration to do that, to do their jobs? Because we have people floundering, like you heard, here in Florida. We are losing tax revenue. People's lives are on the line. They are desperate to return to work. And we will not sit back in Florida while the freedom of people's lives and their businesses are at stake. We will always stand up for freedom in Florida. We, as an executive branch, will always engage. We will always pay attention to the details. I witnessed firsthand this governor sit down with people affected over the last few months by the shutdown of this industry. And that will lead to good leadership. We have filed suit this morning, just before meeting with you here today, against the administration, HHS, and the CDC, demanding that the court find that this effective no-sail order is unlawful and allow our cruises to resume safely. If we do not do this, you will see cruises continue to move these cruises to other countries. The Biden administration has had numerous opportunities to engage and put America's businesses first, Florida's businesses first. And instead, he has allowed the playing field to be tilted to the benefit of foreign countries. And Florida will not allow that to happen. So I thank you so much, Governor DeSantis, for working with us, for telling our office how important this was to people across this state. We will continue to partner and push forward until we see this thriving industry resume. And we will continue to support this executive leadership, which has demonstrated a tremendous amount of engagement, attention to detail, and compassion for those lives who these orders are affecting.
Thank you, Attorney General. Again, thank you, Governor, for your leadership, especially here in the transportation industry. You know, because of your leadership, Florida has continued to make key investments in our transportation system and kept our state moving. This has been evident throughout the pandemic, and recently when you suggested to the legislature that the federal relief funds for COVID-19 be directed towards the DOT in the amount of $938 million for our work program, as well as another $258 million for our much-suffering seaports. But unlike Florida, some have forgotten the most important element to a successful transportation system: the people and their families. So the CDC's no-sail order remains an arbitrary policy that clearly discriminates against one transportation element. And I thank you for the Attorney General for challenging it on our behalf, and for the thousands of Florida families who continue to struggle to make ends meet. This industry and the people, you heard it here today, who are in it, are a critical piece to the state's and nation's economic puzzle, and as public servants, it is our duty to advocate on their behalf. Thank you again, Governor, for your leadership and for fighting for Floridians and in this essential industry, and receive the guidance that they requested and provided the opportunity to get back to work. Thank you again.
Great. Congressman?
Hello, my name is Carlos Jimenez, and I am the congressman who represents Florida Congressional District number 26. Used to be the mayor here, and I know that the issue of the port very well. Port of Miami is, or actually was, the cruise capital of the world. And I say was because no ships have been operating out of the Port of Miami for about a year. And it's time for the CDC to revamp its obsolete conditional sail order. As it stands, it entirely ignores the rapid rate of vaccination across the United States and unfairly singles out the cruise industry. I don't know of any other industry that hasn't been able to operate in some fashion here in the United States. It's only the cruise industry that's been completely shut down. If we're to follow the science and believe the efficacy of the COVID-19 vaccine, then why is the CDC not allowing cruise lines to install mitigation protocols, just like it has allowed airlines, rail companies, ground transportation, hotels, and theme parks? To me, it's unfathomable that they don't even take in consideration that vaccines are a reality in their sale orders. It's unconscionable. This irresponsible decision by the federal bureaucrats who have no concept of what is actually happening out in the real world is deeply hurting South Florida. As I said, this is the cruise capital of the world. This port right here is directly or indirectly responsible for well over 200,000 jobs in the South Florida community. 200,000 jobs and billions of dollars in economic impact. The unwillingness of the CDC to adapt its guidelines to the ever-changing nature of the country's pandemic response unrelentlessly destroys an industry, again, that generates hundreds of thousands of jobs and billions of dollars in economic impact. The conditional sail order has a ripple effect across Florida's economy, and especially Miami-Dade. Aside from killing the cruise line industry, it hurts folks who work on cruise ship maintenance. It hurts our airports, which service passengers from all over the country who come to Florida to cruise. It hurts our hotel workers, our hotels. It hurts our port workers, and all people in between. It even hurts our farmers down in South Dade who restock the cruise ships when they come here and dock. That's the kind of ripple effect that this no-sail order has. Unfortunately for these hardworking Americans feeling the impact of the conditional sail order, these bureaucrats never have to face the reality of a prolonged furlough or have their job jeopardized by a pandemic. They've been working all along. I guarantee if that was their job on the line and had to handle the things that hardworking Americans have had to handle in the real world in the face of the pandemic, they would find the solution and rectify this immediately. I've had conversations with the CDC, joint letter with members of Congress asking for the scientific basis for this conditional order. I sent a letter to the CDC demanding that they update their guidelines to include consideration of the vaccinations and get cruise lines back in the water. I had conversations with members of Congress, both Republican and Democrat, okay, and who agreed that the decision by the CDC is hurting our economy and we need to rectify the situation. Time and time again, CDC has decided to ignore us on this issue. It's time to hold the CDC and this administration accountable for the damage that they are committing against these hardworking Americans and for what they are doing to our local economies. I applaud the Attorney General Ashley Moody for filing this lawsuit, and I also applaud Governor Ron DeSantis for backing these efforts and also for the outstanding job, sir, that you have done in handling this pandemic in the state of Florida. The people of Florida really, are grateful to everything that you've done, and I personally am grateful too for what you've done here in the state of Florida. It's a fabulous job. You know, they're sailing in Asia, they're sailing in Europe, and the United States is actually the leader in vaccinations. It's time to let these ships sail. It's time to let these people get back to work. Thank you.
We also are at a situation where our unemployment is 4.7%, with one of our major industries forcibly mothballed by the federal government. So just imagine if cruise lines come back online, we get to put a lot more people back to work, and then when international travel is able to resume like it used to be, we're going to do even better there. So the fact that we are where we are with the handicaps that the federal government's imposed on us is really, really remarkable. But I think there's so much more we can do if we can just get the federal government to back off this. Well, they're not going to do. We need to have the ruling in court to have them back off this and let us go. Here's the thing. Our hospitality industry, and not just the cruise, anything, they have the biggest incentive of anyone to create a safe and healthy environment for people. If you don't do that, they're not going to want to come. That's why when we were getting the theme parks, I mean, the theme parks closed on their own, and after a few weeks, I said, guys, we need to get you back. You know why? Because you have every incentive to want to make sure people have a safe and enjoyable trip, whether it's Disney World or any of these other places. It's the same thing with the cruise. They don't need a bureaucrat in CDC to demand that they do certain things. They're going to be able to understand what makes sense. They're going to need to do things that make sense, because they need to create environments that are comfortable for those folks. But as the congressman said, we're leading the world in vaccinations. You have this, and we're going to very soon, there's going to be major surpluses of this in the United States within the next few weeks. You watch. And so it will be available literally for everyone, regardless of age, regardless of occupation, all that, within a matter of weeks. And so if you're saying under that circumstance that you can't let the cruise line sail, then you're basically an anti-vaxxer. I mean, you're saying the vaccines don't work, I guess. Because if the vaccines work, then everything needs to be back to normal. And I think they are working, because you look at the seniors, we have much less likely to be hospitalized than before the vaccines. And so there's a lot of really good stuff going on with that. We're obviously now have 18 and up, 16 and up, depending on the vaccine. So that's out there. We have all this stuff available. All these other places have been cruising. That's worked. They've been able to do it well. But here's the thing. If you're worried about Americans and you think you should make the decisions for them, they're still going to cruise if they want to. They're just going to cruise off a different coast. So they'll cruise to go to the Bahamas and cruise. They will spend their money, and it's just not going to be putting our friends in Florida back to work. How does that make any sense? So thank you, Attorney General Moody, for doing this. I wish we didn't have to do this. We started working with the Trump administration last summer to try to get this back on track. It resulted in that conditional sale order, which just wasn't up. I mean, it was not adequate. And then we weren't able to get it done before the administration left, and now we're trying to work with this current. But we need some movement here. We need to get going. So I think this is going to be, I think legally we're in the right here, because if you take the federal government's position, you're basically saying an unelected bureaucracy can simply mothball a massive industry that employs this car. I mean, it's not just who they employ, but there's all these second order effects, which tens of thousands of jobs, hundreds of thousands of jobs just in Florida. You can just mothball that indefinitely. I don't think that that's the way our system of government is supposed to work. So I think we're going to win.
Mr. Governor DeSantis, if the CDC comes out tomorrow and says we can resume cruising, but we have to have vaccine passports temporarily without even...
We're not doing vaccine passports in Florida. It's not necessary. It causes a huge amount of problems, and I think you're seeing a big groundswell against these. I was the first one to come out. Look, Florida has to lead on all this stuff. I think we figured that out, but we led. Now all these other states are doing it. Some of the banning them. Some of the states that have gone in the direction of doing them, it's not working out very well, and people are very upset about it. You have a right to live your life in our society. You can go to a restaurant. You can get on a cruise ship. You can go to a movie theater without the company demanding that you show them your health information. It's just not necessary to do. And here's the way I view it is, if it's something that you're concerned about, make sure you get vaccinated. Great, go get vaccinated. We're all for that. But it is a choice, and it's not something that I want to restrict people based on whether they've gotten the vaccine. Because there's some people that have recovered from COVID, who decide, you know, maybe I'll get it some other time, but right now I recovered. I think you do have immunity. We don't know how long it lasts, but it certainly lasts at least a year. So there's all these different things. Then you have some folks that are a little more hesitant about it. Why would we then put an inhibition on them to do it? So yeah, we're not doing. And the federal government, in fairness to them, they have said they're not going to do a vaccine passport because there was talk of that. That's what prompted me to come out and say it's not happening in Florida. And then they backed off. They said, no, you know, maybe the private sector will go in that direction, but we are not as the federal. And I think that's the right decision. I think they did that because I think they got a lot of backlash for it. But here's the thing. If you allow the private sector to do this, actually we're helping the private sector because I don't think most private businesses really want to get involved in here. So they don't even have to be pressured to do it. But also we have the COVID liability. So they shouldn't fear liability. This is something that people can make decisions about what they want to do. And I think that's the best way to do it. Give people information, give them access to vaccine, let them know that they can make these decisions for themselves. And I trust people will make good decisions for themselves. Yes, ma'am.
Given the concerns with some of the variants, particularly those that there are fears could reinfect those who have already recovered from COVID, would you support the businesses themselves, like some have already done, requiring vaccination in order to board their cruise ship for everyone?
We're not doing vaccine passports. And here's the thing, the vaccines, I mean, look, I get there's different things. And I'm not saying there aren't variants. Obviously, they've identified variants from all this. But when they say that this is going to be like some really new thing, the fact is the vaccines have been effective against the variants. And I think that that's good. And we're letting people know that. But it doesn't change the calculation of a vaccine passport. And just think of it. What are the implications for this? And I'm somebody, I mean, we put seniors first. We always talked about that this was something that we needed to protect seniors from. But I also was someone from the very beginning, and I used to get criticized for it, say, if you're younger, you're at low risk. That's true. The data bears that out. There's some people that are just, I mean, we just had a corporate media ask us last week, why would the governor have put seniors first? What went into that for vaccination? Because they represent over 80% of the COVID mortality. Maybe that was why we did it. But the point is just this. You have radically different views, radically different risk profiles. So if you're younger, this is more influenza-like. If you're older, it's more risky than influenza. So if you make a 22-year-old get a vaccine passport for COVID, something that they're at very little risk for severe outcomes, then what about everything else? What's the next step? What's the next thing that they're going to want to do? And I think it's got profound privacy implications, and it's not just government mandating it. It really is. We live in a society right now where these big private companies have massive amounts of power to shape our lives, with the news we see, the different products, they take data from us. We're trying to do something about that right now with this legislative session to protect. You should be able to opt out of them stealing your data and personal information without your consent. We're working on getting that done. So there's all these implications for this, and boy, I think it would be such a mistake to go down that road. So you can't do it in Florida under my executive order. Now, obviously, that's temporary. The legislature, though, is going to basically codify that. I've been looking at some of the drafts they're working on, so I feel confident we'll do it. Texas will do it. Georgia will do it. South Carolina. Some other states will start doing it. So there'll be enough states that do it that you're not going to have any major company have to insist on it because it'll just hurt their business too much. We would object to it, and here's why. Because, so just think about, like, you want to go to like a ball game and they say you have to show proof of vaccine to go. Well, what if you have a reason for why you didn't get vaccinated? Okay, you then can't participate in society like everybody else. I mean, these are basically public accommodations, and to have different classes of citizens based on vaccine status, I think is a big mistake. And as I mentioned, if someone recovered from COVID last week, they would be advised right now not to get the vaccine. That's just the you want to wait a little bit, or certainly if you're not advised, it would be sensible not to, because you do have infection controlled immunity. So that's just the reality. So I don't want to create different classes of citizens for this. I think that it would be something that we would rue the day. And here's what we've learned on this: you give an inch, there's people that want to take a mile. They want to take your freedom. They want to be able to exercise power. Remember, last year, a little over last year, it was in March of last year, 15 days to slow the spread. 15 days or 2 weeks to stop the cruise, then you guys would be back. Remember, that's what they promised us? And then somehow this is dragged on to where we still have major states in our country that have pretty significant lockdowns. That was not what was promised. And so I think we're wiser now. We may be sadder in terms of some of the damage that we've seen throughout this country, locking kids out of school for a year, destroying people's lives by not letting them work, destroying businesses and all that. But I think we're wiser, and I think we don't want to go down that road. If you say, just let the cruises do it, no one else, it ain't going to end there, and it's going to end up doing. So we're an 800-pound gorilla when it comes to tourism, and I think if we put our foot down, Florida can help lead the way yet again. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it. We're going to come back when the ship starts sailing, all right? So we'll be there, so we got to do a party.